Hello, this is Jerry Mitchell, and we are back for another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts in the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have, why this sub is full of trolls? Is it run by trolls? From Ulu was Gunner, and he says, I noticed several accounts of sub that follow the same pattern. They start following your post of hate and insults, having the sub opt to encourage that. It's the same pattern. They ask you for proof that you give it to them, they deny it. They just keep repeating, it's a lie, everything is a lie for them. And that's pretty much what all of Reddit, I would say. The Reddit, they're it's all pretty much DNC propaganda. You can't dissent at all. And even when you find examples of something that proves their claims false, they'll just keep doubling down on it and saying, no, it's just not true. Even if you keep showing sources contradictory to your claims, people on the other side of the political aisle, people who aren't C shields, they exist too. But I definitely think D and C shields are more common these days, especially when it comes to Reddit, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Angela McCardle and Matt Tuner planning a free event in DC from Baton 13. That's crosswords from the Libertarian Party USA subreddit. And that's for their Rescue Republic Join the Resistance event next weekend in DC. That's on the 29th, I think, next Sunday. And yeah, a lot of people said the last one was funded by the Russians. This one might be funded by the Russians too. But if Russia wants to fund anti-war events, I think they should be able to do so. And yeah, I think people should have the freedom of speech and the freedom to organize and go to do whatever events they want. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, for GOP Mayor to Trump, don't come to Springfield after your dog-eating slurs, from thedailybeast.com by CH for Locks. And I think on that, I think if Trump does want to come to Springfield, he should be able to. I think people have a right to travel wherever they want to. I think the mayor should be able to say whatever he wants to as well, though. But that being said, I don't think the mayor should be using government force to stop Trump from going to Springfield if he does, in fact, want to go to Springfield. And yeah, I personally don't really care for Trump. He always riles up people, but he does have a right to freedom of speech and freedom of travel. And I think that's very important as well. And I know, and the mayor of Springfield, I think, is a Republican, so that people are always going to love to point that out. But, it doesn't really matter what party he is. They're all pretty much the same uniparty anyway. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, for those of you who claim to be Libertarian but are planning on voting for Harris, from High Sierras 13, and that's a YouTube video from, looks like Gary Gunderson, Guns, Gear, and Guns of Gary Gunderson, and that's her saying she's calling for authorities to check on your legally owned guns. And yeah, I definitely do think Kamala's very authoritarian when it comes to the Second Amendment. I think she does say she wants to ban assault weapons, which the government can define whatever it wants as an assault weapon. With that being said, Trump isn't too good on the Second Amendment either, and that's important, I think, to remember as well. And yeah. Then we have, why don't unions have to stand for re-election, from Lemon Limelight, and they said from a Boston Globe opinion piece, why don't unions have to stand for re-election? According to the National Labor Relations Board, 1945 Wagner Act protects workplace democracy by allowing workers to organize unions for their collective benefit. The most fundamental component of any democracy is the right of individuals to periodically choose their representatives. By that measure, America's unions are about as democratic as the North Korean Politburo. The Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that 7.4 million workers in the private sector belong to labor unions in 2023, yet according to a new study from the Institute of the American Worker, which promotes market-oriented labor reform, fewer than 400,000 of those unionized employees, about 5%, have ever voted in an election for a union that represents them. The vast majority of employees in unionized workplaces were hired after the union had already been voted in. Most unions have never been required to confirm that they have the support of current workers by winning a recertification election. What kind of workplace democracy is that? And then there's one more paragraph, and then they add at the end, should unions hold periodic recertification elections so employees get a regular say in wherever the union stays or goes? And yeah, my thoughts on that are, I think if people do want to voluntarily join a union, I think they should be able to do so, but I don't think they should be forced to join if they don't want to. And a lot of people are forced to join unions for specific jobs, and I had to work for a union when I worked at the grocery store back in 2017, and I think that's important to remember. And also, just because unions are private enterprises doesn't mean they can't be authoritarian. People always go on and on about corporate authoritarianism. We need to talk about, I would argue, union authoritarianism as well, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have video shows NYPD officers punching Brooklyn shelter worker from CBSNews.com by Frosty Slawman, and yeah, I don't think that's good. It just goes to show you that the police officers are inherently authoritarian, and normally when they do stuff like this, they get off scot-free because they are agents of the state, and the state has a monopoly on the legal use of force. Then we have Yale, Princeton, and Duke are questioned over declined Asian students from NYTimes.com. That's from Frosty Slawman, and yeah, I don't think that's good, but with that being said, I think if colleges do want to do affirmative action, they should be able to do so, but I do think that is inherently racist. But if colleges do want to be racist, I think they should do so. That's why I think, the problem is that any colleges are public in the first place, because, they should be private organizations fueled by private money rather than public organizations fueled by taxpayer dollars. And if the people who are privately funding them don't like something like affirmative action, they could just take that funding away rather than with the system we have in place now, which wouldn't allow for that to happen. Then we have New Mexico furious after Texas installs razor wire along its border from independent.co.uk by Ragnarok XG. And yeah, I think that's just kind of a political stunt since, Texas is a red state and New Mexico is a blue state. But with that being said, I do think, people should be able to do whatever they want on their own territory. So if it's on the border of territory, if they want to put up razor wire, I think they should be able to do so. But, ultimately, that only kind of looks like a bad look for a lot of people, and it sounds like kind of an Onion or Babylon Bee headline. Oh, they confused New Mexico for Old Mexico, and yeah, that's my thoughts there. And we have famous presidential quotes from Donald Key, and that's the name of Donald Trump. Take the guns first, due process second, from Donald Trump. And I agree, Donald Trump is not very pro-Second Amendment, despite how a lot of people make him seem. Compared to Kamala Harris, he might be better than Kamala Harris, but that's a very, very low bar to clear, and that's important to remember as well. Then we have Mark Robinson, and North Carolina GOP nominee for governor, called himself a black Nazi, supported slavery, and passed comments made on Porn Forum. And then they had in parentheses, Trump's proclaimed better than MLK Lackey from CNN.com by CH4Locks. And yeah, I don't personally care about, internet shit posting or or circle jerking, but I think that's pretty much what that was. I think a lot of if we're holding everyone to the same standards, a lot of people on both sides of the aisle probably said worse online, and that's something that's important to remember as well. So yeah, and next we have he voted to keep early voting sites on Tarrant College campuses. Then came the backlash from CaraNews.org by Flimsy L556 Free. And they added Republican Commissioner for Tarrant County Precinct 4 censured after voting to keep voting sites open on college campuses. The backlash from fellow Republicans is full mask off over whatever the fears of playing on a level field consist of. And yeah, I personally do think, we do have a lot of voting sites these days. We could argue we do have too many, but even with that being said, anything that you'd say is against either democracy or voting is definitely going to be used against you by people these days, and that's important to remember, I would say, and that's my thoughts on that issue. With that being said, though, just because something is democratic or voted on, it doesn't make it inherently good. Democracy is simply tyranny of the majority, and I think that's very much the libertarian position. Then we have End the Fed, Vote Libertarian from FunCal321, and that's a picture of Jerome Powell at his podium, the current Fed chair. And yeah, I definitely do think we should end the Fed. I think we should return to the classic gold standard, because right now our money's tied to nothing, and the Fed can just raise rates and control the value of the currency without any backlash whatsoever. And I would argue in a lot of ways the Federal Reserve Chair is more powerful than the president, because they can actually say what money is worth, and I think that's very important to remember. Then we have Homeland Security admits it tried to manufacture fake terrorists for Trump. A new Homeland Security report details orders to connect protesters arrested in Portland and to whoever once don't ever service in those of Trump's imaginary anti-flip plot. From Gizmodo.com by Swamp Yankee Dan. And yeah, I don't think that's good, but it's important to remember that that these organizations are government agencies are inherently corrupt and immune to and inherently susceptible to politically motivated directives like this. I'm sure the Biden administration's probably done this stuff as well, and that's why I think the libertarian solution is to just get rid of all of them, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have South Carolina tries to execute Freddie Owens despite questions over guilt. What to know from USAtoday.com by FilmZL5563. And yeah, I personally am against the death penalty, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this guy is innocent. With that being said, I personally don't think the state should be taking people's lives as long as they're not actively violating the NAP. And if they are actively violating the NAP, you could still make the argument that that doesn't justify a state's use of force as well, especially its monopoly on force. Then we have Wildly completely mask off here from Dirt Bowls. And that's across to the neo-feudalism subreddit, why anarcho-capitalism is neo-feudalism, why that's a good thing. And yeah, I personally don't really care for feudalism, but I do think it could be argued to be better than our current system, especially if people voluntarily consent to it. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have FTC chief Lena Khan says fans as different as Bernie Sanders and Matt Gaetz. She's not surprised from QZ.com by Ninja Lover. And yeah, it does show you that a lot of people these days are against corporate authoritarianism. But that being said, I don't think government authoritarianism like the FTC is necessarily the answer for it. I think the people should hold the company for corporate authoritarianism accountable, not the state. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Jill Stein gets attacked by her fanbase after calling Putin and Assad war criminals from CH Relax, and that's crosswords from the Leopards Ate My Face subreddit. And yeah, I definitely do think this is just Reddit trying to make the Green Party look bad because Reddit's pretty much all DNC propaganda at this point. But with that being said, I do think Putin and Assad are war criminals, but I would argue that pretty much all the U.S. presidents are as well. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Cards Against Humanity sues SpaceX, alleges invasion of land on the U.S.-Mexico border, in parentheses, property rights, am I right, from RSTechnical.com by CH4Locks, and that's crossword from the technology subreddit. And I think this is just political grandstanding by the Cards Against Humanity people, and I don't think we really should care about it too much, so that's my thoughts there. Then we have Network of Georgia election officials strategizing to undermine 2024 result before voting begins from TheGuardian.com by CH4Locks. And yeah, I don't think that's very good, but that being said, any dissent at all at this point is going to be held up by the left as election subversion. I think that's very important to remember. That when they lose the election, they'll point stuff like this and they'll say Russia, Russia, Russia again, and suddenly it'll be fine to question. Say elections are rigged again when one Trump says it. It's the worst thing ever. It just goes to show you how it really just matters who's in the in group and who's in the out group above all else. Then we have Ohio City's mayor issues emergency order over false migrant rumors from TheGuardian.com by Swamp Yankee Dan. And I don't think, I personally don't really care for all the, I think it might be false flags that, the migrant rumors are experienced. But that being said, I don't think, the government should be issuing emergency orders over people's rights, people's freedom of speech. And that's my thoughts on that issue. If people want to say that they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, they might even eat the people next, they should be able to do so. And that's my thoughts there. Freedom of speech includes speech that you don't like. And I think we're going to wrap up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.